payments is a massive distribution game, and it's also a massive scale game. Well, like a lot of things that are very unprofitable at small scale end up being very profitable at large scale, right? And I think for us, if you kind of have an objective look at the landscape, stablecoin payments is a very small sector in the grand scheme of things. I mean, you look at the volume Bridge is doing, you look at the volume BVNK, Zero Hash on the payment side, and all of those are great companies and are fantastically smart. But you're talking about like tens of billions in payment flow, which sounds like a large number. Very much isn't in a payments context. I mean, Stripe is doing trillions, and so you need to get to that scale for stablecoin payments to like truly make sense from just a pure payments perspective.
Welcome to the Edge Podcast. I'm DeFi Dad here with Nomadic. Today's show spotlights a new high-performance L1 purpose-built for stablecoins called Plasma. So we're recording this in advance of the launch of Plasma, which has an estimated $2 billion of stablecoins. We're here to dissect what sets Plasma apart from other L1s or Ethereum L2s, and why do we need an L1 that is purpose-built for stablecoins.
We've seen a number of new entrants into this stablecoin payments place, with, I guess, the most recent one being Stripe's Tempo. I think Plasma is situated very interestingly, though. Their goal is to be this DeFi-focused payments chain, where I don't see someone like a Tempo kind of getting into the DeFi side as much as like more of a crypto-native Plasma will be. And the main kind of chain that I think this could disrupt, and we talked about this a bit in the podcast, is Tron. Tron is sitting on about 78 billion-ish of stablecoins, and I have heard things, through the tea leaves, rumors that maybe Tether isn't super comfortable with that amount of TVL living on Tron. Even though I don't know of a ton of security issues up to this point, I think there's appetite for Tether to be more evenly distributed amongst potentially more secure chains. So I think therein lies the massive opportunity for Plasma. And that's one of the main takeaways for me, was just like before this conversation, I was kind of thinking, how do you compete head on with Stripe's Tempo? But I think there's a really interesting kind of niche that a big niche that Plasma can kind of fall into here.
Yeah, not to put words into Paul's mouth, but my read is that the lead-in here is with stablecoins. It's a blockchain that caters to stablecoins more than just Tether, too. Like, they've got commitments across the board from all the major stablecoin providers to go live on day one of Plasma. However, I think that there is a better chance that the appetite of crypto natives that they're designing this L1 for are going to want to use DeFi with volatile assets. And so one of the things that I'm not sure we answer in the podcast, but I'm curious what listeners will think is this an L1 that ultimately evolves into serving a more like general purpose audience, the types of DeFi that we find on thriving L1s, like an Ethereum mainnet or any sort of, Ethereum L2.
One other thing I was really curious about going into this was how Plasma will handle this massive distribution problem that is payments. I feel like it's a game that's owned majorly by the incumbents and just huge names that we've all heard of in the space. So how does a new entrant come in and, take that market share from these older incumbents and the, players like Stripe, Visa, MasterCard, whoever it may be?
I think the major competition that a Plasma is going after is, like you mentioned, Tron. There's just an enormous pie to eat any sort of market share up. So with the 79 billion in just Tether on Tron, if they are able to, take whatever sliver of that to get started, I mean, we're talking about billions, maybe even tens of billions, and that's major liquidity to go after. But it serves a different purpose than what I see for something like Ethereum mainnet. I don't see Plasma, especially on day one or anytime soon, as being uncensorable. That's trust that is going to take a very long time for them to be able to earn. But I appreciate the experimentation here that is about to take place. And on the scale it's about to take place with, again, nearly $2 billion committed before the main net is fully live. So just a quick reminder, you can subscribe at the-edge.xyz. That is the best place to get real-time notifications for when we release a new podcast. You can also subscribe at our link tree at edge_pod. So you can find links to Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. And then we want to give a big shout out to all of the sponsors that make the Edge podcast and the Edge newsletter possible. Folks like TOROS Finance, REDSTONE, Maple Finance, Mantle, GEARBOX, Puffer Finance, and more. Otherwise, we hope you enjoy the episode. Grow wealth exponentially. With TOROS leveraged tokens, when the market moves in your favor, your gains become parabolic. They're built to ride trends, auto-compounding profits. With TOROS, it's simple. Pick a vault, deposit, and your exposure is multiplied, maintained, and protected automatically against liquidations. TOROS reduces risk and keeps you in the market ready for the rebound. When markets dip, the vaults auto-adjust, softening losses and preserving your position. Just pick a token to multiply your returns. TOROS Finance, exponential gains with leveraged tokens. To learn more, go to toros.finance. REDSTONE is building the Oracle backbone to unlock real-world finance on-chain and next-gen DeFi. With modular gas-efficient feeds across over 110 chains, trusted by 170 clients, supporting over 1,300 assets, from value-accruing stablecoins, liquid staking and restaking tokens, to treasuries, private credit, and commodity tokens, REDSTONE delivers accurate real-time data where it matters most. The biggest platforms and protocols in DeFi today choose REDSTONE oracles, such as Athena, Securitize, BlackRock Biddle, Pendle, Spark, and Maple Finance. If you're building the future of finance on-chain, you need REDSTONE's leading modular blockchain oracle layer. To learn more, go to redstone.finance, and thanks to REDSTONE for supporting us here at the Edge podcast and Edge newsletter. Maple Finance is one of my favorite products in DeFi. It is a gateway to sustainable real yield powered by over $1 billion in AUM across USDC and BTC products. And now with SYRUPUSDC by Maple, anyone can earn institutional-grade yield. Learn more at syrup.fi, and thanks to Maple for supporting us here at the Edge podcast and Edge newsletter. FALCON Finance, the team behind the fastest-growing synthetic dollar, with institutional yields that are competitive and sustainable, offering yield optimized across your favorite DeFi protocols. Point season is now live. Learn more at falcon.finance. NEUTRL is the next generation of crypto-native yield. Their synthetic dollar NUSD taps into OTC arbitrage, funding rate inefficiencies, and delta-neutral strategies to deliver premium, stable returns without taking market direction risk. NEUTRL is currently live in private beta and will be opening for public deposits soon. Learn more at neutral.fi. All right, let's introduce Paul Faecks, founder of Plasma. Paul, welcome to the Edge podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We want to start with your background. So we heard from your colleague Nathan that you were a professional poker player. Tell us about that, and love to get the whole story about how you got into crypto.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was somewhat mediocre at that, to be very honest. But that's initially how I kind of really deeply got into crypto. Had a bunch of the kind of early poker friends who were like, frankly, way more kind of visionary and early to all things DeFi than I was. And that's kind of initially how then I really got into crypto, and then spent a lot of time on-chain, kind of went through the very early Ethereum trenches, and then DeFi summer, and then kind of all of that kind of really kind of DeFi going from not even existing conceptually to then being very large very quickly, basically, and was very active in that whole transition.
Yeah, I want to talk a bit more about that DeFi summer era because, again, talking to your teammate Nathan, he threw out that you had one of the highest degen scores in the world at one point. Maybe can you?
Yeah, I was top 10 at some point. I've both lost and made money in horrifically embarrassing ways. I think is a kind of the summary of that time in my life.
Can you like maybe just fill in like what degen score is? I know it's like sort of a badge of honor for people that were on chain a lot in that time, but yeah, like can you just describe a little bit about it?
Yeah, I mean it's an incredibly niche flex, but I think they deprecated the old degen score, but it was basically just ranking wallets by activity and volume, and you get points for like using different protocols and for like being early to chains and being early to like farming stuff and kind of boiled all of that down into a score. And then there's this group chat, the degen score Citadel, which I think is actually still around, but like then like I think top 200 DeFi people or something would hang out and yeah, that was kind of a result of just like trying a lot of stuff on chain.
So Paul, you're building quote a high performance layer 1 blockchain purpose built for stable coins. Let's talk first about why are stable coins having such an important moment? Like why are they generally accepted now as important, products built on DeFi on-chain rails?
Sure. Yeah, I think that was actually a surprisingly recent phenomenon to an extent, where, I mean, really pre-2020, stablecoins didn't really play a massive role. It was a really small sector, and you've really had this kind of just vertical takeoff of like usage, outstanding supply of stablecoins, really. And so this is really kind of a phenomenon of the last couple of years. And I mean, we talk about it as like the money 2.0 moment, basically. Well, like you do have kind of look at like the history of how financial markets and just kind of financial infrastructure has developed, and you can kind of put that into like very distinct phases where you have the like just like truly like gold standard like non-fractional reserve banking era. Then you move to fractional reserve banking, and now you're kind of moving to stablecoins, and so It's a bit of a meme, obviously, but we do talk about it as like being money 2.0 and being kind of a true kind of basically monetary step forward in a lot of ways. And I think that change very much hasn't permeated, where stablecoins are large and like you have 260, 270 billion outstanding right now, which is a really large number, right? But in the grand scheme of things, it also isn't, right? And so we're very optimistic that stablecoins are going to be like growing into kind of actually taking meaningful market share in just kind of global commerce.
So as of this recording, DeFi Llama estimates there is about $286 billion of stable coins across all the different networks. Where do you see room for improvement? Maybe also what is working well with stable coins?
I think it's really interesting because I mean I spend all of my waking hours thinking about stablecoins, and I think it's often kind of wrongly perceived to like be one product, basically, where I think stablecoins is like a category of products, basically, and I think it's underappreciated how different stablecoins are and the different use cases are. Where like USDC and USDT, for example, in my view, are like wildly different products, and one is kind of the domestic US cash product, basically, and the other one is like the global euro dollar kind of export dollar product. And I think those are actually fully distinct products to an extent. And you can get way more granular, right? But like, is USDS truly the same product as USDC? USDS being the maker sky, algorithmic stablecoin. I think like you can probably find 4 different like truly distinct products in the stablecoin land, and I think all of them have like varying degrees of merit and are kind of interesting in different ways. We're obviously most bullish and most interested on kind of the global export USD product, but like USDT is the unequivocal leader, and I think that is a very kind of recent emergence as a product category that really hasn't. I mean, it's obviously kind of scaled a lot, but at the same time, like it's truly kind of penetrated 0.5% of its potential or something. And so I think that is where like we see the most interesting things happening.
Paul, can you just speak to the USDT dominance a little bit as somebody that spends all their waking hours thinking about this stuff?
I think it's a mix between just having incredible distribution, and like being known by people and being like just used. And stablecoins are just fundamentally extremely network heavy businesses, right? But a stablecoin that is accepted nowhere also has very little value, and so I think you do have these like compounding network effects, and I think Tether was very early to realize how kind of valuable of a product this is, and how interesting of a business you can build around this, and so they've built a lot of those network effects that are extremely hard to just replicate, right? Because I mean, USDT is like the main trading pair on Binance and is on every exchange globally, and people know, like you go to El Salvador and at a random small kiosk you can pay with USDT, and that has like, that's really hard to like quantify in terms of how valuable it is, but it's incredibly valuable.
Paul, let's go ahead and get into Plasma. Tell us at a high level, what is Plasma?
Sure. Really high level, Plasma is a blockchain built for stablecoins specifically. I think stablecoins are the most interesting use case in all of crypto, and the one use case that's kind of truly found product market fit at massive scale, and most generalized chains don't treat them as such, is our view, where you can you need to be very focused on stablecoins, I think, to like truly be the best execution environment for them, and that involves the chain, everything around it, the ecosystem on it, the go-to-market, the partnerships, like all of that kind of plays a role in this. And I think no one has done a good job of just being focused on stablecoins only, and so that's what we're doing at Plasma.
Paul, I want to get into a little bit of the technical elements underpinning Plasma, but maybe first, payments to me just seems like such a major distribution problem. You even mentioned this earlier when talking about USDT. Yeah, so how are you tackling this distribution? I'm mainly curious about, your geographical approach, key partners. Basically, what are you putting together to ensure your success and your ability to scale Plasma?
That's a really hard question that has a non-short answer. Obviously, but I'll try to kind of give the TLDR. Payments is a massive distribution game, and it's also a massive scale game. Well, like a lot of things that are very unprofitable at small scale end up being very profitable at large scale, right? And I think for us, if you kind of have an objective look at the landscape, stablecoin payments is a very small sector in the grand scheme of things. I mean, you look at the volume Bridge is doing, you look at the volume BVNK, Zero Hash on the payment side, and all of those are great companies and fantastically smart. But you're talking about like tens of billions in payment flow, which sounds like a large number. Very much isn't in a payments context. I mean, Stripe is doing trillions, and so you need to get to that scale for stablecoin payments to like truly make sense from just a pure payments perspective. And so it's a very nascent space that no one has won in our view, because it's not been around long enough. And I think for us, it's about being somewhat focused on the crypto native side of things. If you look at where users are and then where volumes are, Binance is doing 1,000 times the stablecoin payment volume that Bridge is doing, which is now owned by Stripe, obviously. And so I think for us, it's about just having like a very objective view of reality in terms of where do we want to partner and who makes most sense and who actually has kind of market power in this pretty nascent category, and then how do we work with them, and then how do we have kind of a deep long-term relationship on those kind of key things. And that's very much how we have approached distribution, is basically who are the best players we can partner with, and then how do we kind of have as close a relationship with them as we can. And I think the same philosophy very much also applies to how we're thinking about building out a DeFi ecosystem, for example. And I think you just need, I think as a blockchain, and this is actually my kind of general criticism of how a lot of kind of new blockchains have gone to market, where like a lot of it is so like quantity focused, and it's like, oh my god, we have like 200 projects building on us, and like half of them are like uniforks, okay, that's really interesting, I guess. But I think like for us, we've always just been very focused on how can we work with the best, basically, and then how can we ensure that like the best want to work with us, and that like everyone is kind of mutually incentivized to make those things very large. And that's how we think about distribution. That's how we think about DeFi. That's kind of how we think about the entire company to an extent, really.
Paul, how are you guys thinking about the balance of being censorable and uncensorable? Like, how do you approach that, as a stablecoin purpose-built L1?
Yeah, I think that's a question that like requires a lot of nuance in answering, obviously, right? Because you like, there's so much complexity in this. For us, what is very clear to us is we want to aggressively decentralize very, very quickly. For us, the chain itself is kind of a component of the product suite where we're building out, and then you have kind of many things around it that likely will not be fully permissionless because they just can't be, right? Because you do have you do like want to be compliant in every way you could be. For us, I think decentralized networks have incredible value, and we're very much building a decentralized network. That doesn't mean that like you want to be the place to like launder money. I think Ethereum and Solana and Optimism, every L2, like everyone has just kind of found different shapes of a solution to this. It's something we've spent quite a bit of time on, and then that, like, I think especially long term is incredibly important to get right. Like we do want to very quickly decentralize and like not be in a position to even make those decisions, basically.
Paul, when you talk about decentralizing Plasma, what do you mean?
Having an increasingly decentralized validator set, and I mean, given that Plasma is proof of stake, anyone can in theory kind of very soon then run a validator and basically provide security to the network, and I think the end state for every network has to be that is fully open and permissionless.
Paul, as an L1, can you talk to us at a high level about how the consensus would work for the Plasma blockchain?
Sure. The Plasma consensus is very heavily facet stuff, based on the BFT family of consensus, which means it's proof of stake, and very quickly post mainnet launch, we will also basically have an increasingly open system on the staking and validation side of things, and so fundamentally it's proof of stake and in the BFT family.
Paul, I want to talk about something that's sort of a hot button issue right now. Well, in certain niche areas of crypto Twitter, so really nobody else on the planet is thinking about this or talking about it. But
I could think of I could think of 17 things that like fit this bill, but yes.
Essentially, basically, why did you choose to become an L1 versus something like an Ethereum L2? What was the thought process? What did you look into in this kind of discovery phase to make this decision?
Yeah, I think that's a very valid question, and I saw a lot of the kind of tempo discussion on L1, L2. Why is it not an L2? Why are other things an L2? I don't think there's a correct answer here necessarily. I think like both have different sets of trade-offs, and I think both have value and have a purpose. For us, we've got to fully build our own consensus. That is fast based. We use Ref as a baseline on the VM side, which is open source and fantastic and highly usable. And we felt like that was the right architectural choice to kind of get us to basically a product offering and just a feature set that we felt like we needed. And so we're very happy with that choice. Others making the choice to be an L2, I think, is perfectly valid. For us, we have very high conviction that the route we chose kind of gives us the most freedom to kind of make architectural decisions, basically, that are not hindered by like an existing product stack to an extent.
Just on that note about the architecture, something I found out when I was looking into Plasma a little bit more is there's a tie-in to Bitcoin as well. Can you maybe explain to our audience how Plasma ties into Bitcoin? Is that for security? What exactly is that?
Sure. I think that the kind of most interesting and most usable piece of that is we're building our own Bitcoin bridge. You can natively bridge Bitcoin onto Plasma, and in that same vein, I'm working on a kind of fully open source, basically wrapped Bitcoin alternative. I think it's interesting because I think people have a general reluctance to use Tron, and then they also have a general reluctance to use WBTC, and I think we're kind of tackling both at the same time to an extent. I think using Bitcoin in DeFi and on-chain and then kind of across kind of different use cases on the on-chain side of things is still extremely hard and is very much an unsolved issue, and we're tackling that very aggressively.
This episode is brought to you by MANTLE, pioneering a revolutionary new category called blockchain for banking by bridging TradFi and Web3 into one unified stack. With on-chain transactions, TradFi rail compatibility, and integrated DeFi features, MANTLE is reshaping how financial services work. Their flagship app UR lets users hold fiat and crypto all in one Swiss-backed account, making real-world finance usable on-chain. To learn more, go to ur.app and follow mantle_official on Twitter. Spark, one of the leading DeFi protocols, has had a year like no other, deploying $2 billion into RWAs with BlackRock's Biddle and other institutional giants, adding over $1 billion in TVL, and distributing over $9 billion across the DeFi ecosystem. Now, Spark are setting their sights on further global expansion and have introduced the Spark token, which is available on leading centralized exchanges. There's never been a better time to discover Spark, the on-chain capital allocator. Learn more at spark.fi.
Paul, I want to transition a bit to your DeFi strategy. There's always a cold start problem, of course, with any new L1 in the space. And I'm always interested and intrigued to see the different flavors and strategy that new builders will bring to the space with solving that cold start problem. One thing I've seen out of the gate, and which is kind of what drew me to wanting to have this conversation, is Plasma was able to create a ton of mindshare before launch and a ton of deposits early. And then I reached out to your teammate, Nathan, who we've mentioned a few times, and he laid out the DeFi strategy to me on a call. And I came away just like, wow, like that DeFi strategy is literally, if I could name who I would want to be launch partners of a chain, that's pretty much it. So maybe can you kind of outline who you're launching with, some of these core DeFi partners that we're going to see on Plasma when it goes live?
Sure, absolutely. And I think like you bring up a really good point. I mean, you always have these massive just like chicken and egg cold start problems in kind of starting any. In the end, I mean, it's a two-sided marketplace, right? And so you need both sides to be there. And so we did this free deposit campaign that you touched on, and that basically involved a public sale, and the only way to participate in the public sale was to basically bridge stablecoins over to Plasma. We capped that at $1 billion in stablecoins, and that got filled quite quickly. And then separately also announced our partnership with Binance on the earn side. I think 2 or 3 weeks ago now, and that's another $1 billion in stablecoins that are going to be on Plasma, the chain on day one. So we're launching with $2 billion in stables on day one. I mean, I kind of outlined it earlier. I think for us, we want to, like, we spend a lot of time thinking about like who do we want to align ourselves with in terms of partners, and I think that that's very much true on the DeFi side as well, in terms of like what is kind of the top tier, and how can we work with them in kind of a long term and as large as possible a capacity. And so we're launching with Aave, we're launching with Ethena, we're launching with Fluid, we're launching with Pendle, we're launching with, like, basically the entire kind of blue chip ecosystem is going to be there on day one on Plasma. And I mean, specifically Aave is like the kind of core lending infrastructure there, is something we have a great relationship with and a great respect for. And I think that is going to like be the liquidity backbone basically of Plasma on day one, but then also long term. I think for us, we very much view DeFi as like a component that has to be there. I don't think anyone wins on just having like the blue chip DeFi ecosystem, right? Because like it exists. Like no one wins by having Aave. I don't think we win by having Aave. I think it's more kind of it's a necessary but not sufficient condition, I think, for like having a functioning ecosystem. That's kind of how I view it, at least. And then so for us, it's very much, we want to be the number one place for stablecoins, and that requires deep liquidity on the lending side, that requires deep liquidity on the trading side, on swapping stablecoins. And for us, the best way to get there is to work with the largest, like most battle-proven teams that exist. And so that's kind of how we got to this thinking. And for us, that's a component, but not like, I think DeFi matters a lot, but it matters as like a means to an end to like achieve basically, like you need the deepest like stablecoin functionality basically. And I think DeFi is a massive component of that, but like it's a means and not an end basically. Is how we view it.
So when you say you want Plasma to be the number one place for stablecoins, can you talk to us more, Paul, about what does DeFi look like with Plasma live? I'm thinking about today, we have, L1s like Ethereum and Solana. We have L2s, which I think have provided more of the kinds of user experience benefits that you talk about, low fees, fast transactions. For example, if I was going to send an angel check to a team I'm investing in, I tend to send it over something like Base or Arbitrum. That said, I have all sorts of other options in terms of DeFi there. In the future, with Plasma Live, is the goal to be, let's say, if you're a Binance or Coinbase user, let's say you're sending stablecoins specifically through Plasma. Is there any other sort of DeFi that you anticipate being really popular on Plasma?
Sure. I mean, I think for us, next to just kind of the existing blue chip ecosystem of Aave and Ethena and Pendle and like all of those kind of known things, there's a couple of like interesting native things. We work closely with a team called Access, and they're doing really interesting things on kind of the like yield and then arbitrage side of things, and in terms of kind of generating yield on stablecoins. And there's kind of a long list of those kind of more interesting use cases outside of just the blue chips. I think for us, you ask like what's kind of what does it mean to like have DeFi for stablecoins? I think in the end you want as a user to just like very seamlessly have like the ability to basically do anything with your stablecoins, whether that is on the spending side or on the yield generation side or on the use Bitcoin as collateral and borrow stables against that and spend those. I think all of those use cases just have to work at a massive scale. And I think that's also where some of the DeFi ecosystems of a lot of the L2s that are fast and cheap, but then don't actually have DeFi markets that work at scale. It's real. I mean, you have one DeFi ecosystem that really has kind of hit scale, and that's ETH mainnet. That's it. Like you do have interesting things going on in other ecosystems, but like it's a very different scale than what Ethereum has. And for us, like we aspire for Plasma to be a very large place to actually kind of do things with stablecoins and for that to like be possible in a way that wouldn't on Arbitrum or Optimism or any other L2 or L1.
I think a part of the reason Ethereum mainnet is, so popular for folks to deposit their liquidity is obviously the track record, the guarantee to being able to access your liquidity, the fact that it's uncensorable. And a part of that success is stable coins. So if you're taking one of the ultimate winning use cases for DeFi and you're focusing on a high performance L1 that caters to that, I guess what I'm wondering is, if you're successful, does Plasma ultimately evolve into a general purpose L1? Like, it's starting as this L1 focused on stable coins, but like with the attraction of all that liquidity, I mean, ultimately, do you have folks that are wanting to borrow against tokenized Bitcoin and ETH, and basically you evolve into something that looks more like, a thriving Ethereum L2 ecosystem or like a thriving Ethereum mainnet? Anyways, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. I think in the end, Plasma is very much built for stablecoins specifically. So I think that's kind of where we have unique differentiation. I think besides that, just being a kind of full generalized L1 isn't terribly interesting. Basically, Plasma is fully permissionless, so like anyone can deploy and build whatever they want without us having any say in it. So I'm sure there's going to be creative and interesting things that are probably like stablecoin adjacent, but maybe not fully just focus only on stablecoins. Things like that will very likely be built on Plasma, but it's not something that we are very focused on. Basically, we want to be stablecoin focused and be the best environment for that, and then everything else we very actively ignore. Will it still happen? Possibly.
Hey folks, I want to tell you about our sponsor, GEARBOX, the protocol that reimagines on-chain lending. With GEARBOX, you can access 10x credit across DeFi or lend for passive yields with single asset deposits and no impermanent loss. Users can access leverage to margin trade, stake, farm, and more. To learn more about GEARBOX, go to gearbox.fi. Rumple Labs is revolutionizing DeFi. Rumple lets you turn points into profits by tokenizing rewards you can trade from top protocols like Pendle, Athena, Fluid, Symbiotic, and many others. No more waiting for airdrops or TGEs. DeFi's smartest investors are already using Rumple to unlock instant liquidity and maximize their yields. So join Rumple today and start spinning your points into gold. Learn more at rumple.xyz. Puffer Institutional delivers secure, high-yield Ethereum staking built for institutions with battle-tested security, granular access controls, and the ability to boost APY by securing multiple AVSs. Puffer gives institutions full control and optimized returns. Puffer is also behind the Unify-based rollup, aiming to transform Ethereum's future in a world where all L2s are working together. To learn more, go to institutional.puffer.fi.
Paul, one other thing, you started to kind of answer it, I think, but I just want to come back to this a bit. And when thinking about payments and DeFi together, can you go a bit deeper just on how synergistic they are to one another? I feel like there's a natural complement between those two, but would love to hear your thoughts on that.
There massively is, right? Where I think payments is like we talk about as kind of stablecoins having basically three major use cases, which is spend, earn, and save. Like those are really kind of the three main categories of what a user like what one wants to do with their money, right? And they're not fully disconnected. I think they're kind of like all part of the same family of use cases to an extent. And so the same place you want to spend money, you may also want to like park liquidity that you have, but you aren't spending day to day to generate yield and to save up or to to use other assets as collateral and then borrow USD denominated assets against that to spend those. And so I think all of this is kind of one version of a very similar use case to an extent. And so for us, building the payments functionality out also necessitates just having the ability for like a user of a payments product to also have an ability to save and then to do other things with stablecoins than just sending them from A to B. And I think like all of those only work like synergistically as kind of pieces of a puzzle, basically.
Paul, there seems to be a ton of new competition entering the payment space, with Circle announcing ARC, Stable, a Tether-focused chain, and then the big one lately, of course, is Stripe's Tempo chain. How are you thinking about all of this competition right now as someone who's building Plasma?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the landscape has massively changed in the last year, where I think the main question has always been, like, why are you building a payment-specific chain? And, like, why is it interesting? And why does it have value? And I think it's been very gratifying to see that now. I mean, Stripe, being one of the largest payment companies, is now building a payments-focused L1, and you read the announcement, and like I think they've come to very similar conclusions to the ones we've come to, but that is fundamentally actually very validating for us personally. I think it is going to be highly competitive. I think there's going to be 20 more payments-focused chains. I think you always have this in crypto, right? But like you have a good idea and people realize it has value, and then like it slightly overshoots and like let's build it 45 times. I think a very similar thing is going to happen on the payment L1 side of things. I think there's very sharp people, specifically kind of on the kind of trad side. So the Stripe Tempo and I think Circle Arc is a bit of a nothing burger, but that's a whole different topic. So I have deep respect for Stripe and what they're doing, and I look forward to being in the arena with them.
Do you see there's multiple winners here, or is this like a winner takes most situation?
I think it's really tough to say. I think in the end, you probably have like a massive power law distribution and outcomes. Where I don't know if it's one winner. It might be a couple. I'm convinced there won't be 20 winners.
I think another consideration for anyone that's focused on stablecoins is the Genius Act. How are you thinking about the Genius Act in the context of Plasma?
I think for us it's great to see that stablecoins increasingly have a very clear regulatory framework globally, and I think that's kind of the necessary component of the kind of true kind of next step of adoption. There's things I disagree with on the specifics. There's things I agree with on the specifics of what this looks like. But I think in general, having pragmatic and pro-crypto regulation of stablecoins is net a good thing, and then something we actively welcome. Obviously, as a Plasma, I think this is very much in our interest to be the case, and so I think in the end, I think that there's a lot of interesting things that are happening on the regulatory side of things. I mean, Genius Act and Stable Act, and then you do have the market infrastructure bill that is likely going to pass at some point this year, maybe if not this year, then next year. So I think you do have a changing regulatory landscape for like the entire industry and in the end, and then I think mostly in good ways in my view.
Paul, something that I personally see, and I don't know if this is true or verified at all, but I see Tether, I don't want to say, well, maybe, yeah, moving away a bit from Tron. And I suspect maybe they feel like they have outgrown Tron a little bit. I think if you get to as big as they are, the question of security kind of comes to mind. Like I've heard people say that, Justin Sun is all 26 validators and the third one or the 27th one is his mom or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how decentralized Tron is. It has, I guess, seemingly from the outside worked well. But I wonder if a lot of what I'm seeing with Tether's growth strategy here, the they're sort of aligning with this new stable chain as well. They seem to be leaning into the partnership with you guys at Plasma. It just looks like they're finding new territory and new places to grow and distribute the Tether stablecoin. So is any of that true? Is that kind of what you're seeing? I don't know if you're able to comment on that.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not really comfortable speaking on Tether's behalf. We have a fantastic working relationship with them and deeply respect and admire them. In terms of their thinking on any of the specifics, I think you would have to go and ask Paolo, and I'm sure he would have thoughts on this, but it's really tough for me to comment. As a chain, I mean, we do have kind of a portfolio of different stablecoins that are going to be there on day one, and we work with most of the very large issuers, and so for us, obviously USDT is the kind of one pristine tokenized USD product, and I think that won't change, and I think there's a lot of market share to be gained from other networks that have meaningful USDT right now, and Tron is obviously very high up on that list, and that's something we're very focused on.
So, Paul, remind us, when will Plasma be live, and what can we as DeFi users look forward to using on day one?
Plasma is going to be live late September, and we'll have basically the entire blue chip ecosystem on day one, and Aave is going to be there, Ethena is going to be there, there's going to be very cheap USDT borrow, and we'll kind of have the entire suite of stablecoin features live, and that happens late September.
So on day one, would there also be like Ether or tokenized Bitcoin, or just strictly stable coins when we're talking about something like Aave?
No, I mean that it's going to be fully permissionless, and that there's going to be a variety of stablecoins, but then also kind of volatile assets, obviously.
Makes sense. Well, guys, I think this is a great place for us to wrap up. So first, I want to remind our listeners they can learn more about Plasma by going to plasma.to, that's TO. Then check out their mothership handle for Plasma. It's Plasma FDN for Plasma Foundation. And then Paul's personal handle is PaulyPunt. We'll put that into the show notes so you get the right handles. Otherwise, Paul, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was really enjoyable to get some like information ahead of the launch. But otherwise, any final word for us before we go?
No, I mean, deeply enjoyed this, and appreciate you guys having me on, and looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. To stay up to date with future episodes, plus get expert tips, strategies, and exclusive content, subscribe to our free newsletter at the-edge.xyz.